What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Bench. I'm Brandon Carney, alongside Maddie Kroll. As always, we are back from our Thanksgiving, our Turkey Day holiday. Maddie, how was your weekend? How was your extended weekend? What were you up to?
Well, I had a great week until OU lost. That was rough. We kind of talked about that. But outside of that, no, it was good. I was fed well, and now I get to do a lot of cardio to make up for that. How you had a lot of traveling.
Yeah, so I mean, you just said cardio. I will be at the gym for the next several days straight for the same reasons. But yeah, big travel day. We went down to Louisiana for a couple days to see family, then Texas to see more family, and then we actually went to the Texas A&M LSU game. Texas A&M is now undefeated at games that I've been to this year, so we got to storm the field. Really cool opportunity. I mean, I'm not an A&M grad. My girlfriend is, but I was able to storm the field, and that's a circumstance that you're not going to run into too often with Texas A&M because they're expecting to win games most of the time. So it's kind of a unique thing. They were super excited to have something to hang their hat on for this year to knock off number 5 LSU in the midst of what was an otherwise pretty disappointing season. So really cool.
Did you see that LSU player that was like hitting his head on the helmet and the bench's reaction? That was one of my favorite moments from the weekend.
That looked painful, but no, it was a really cool weekend. We got back super late last night, and now, hey, we are back here, back on the grind. One other thing I do want to give a shout out to, because it has developed over the past week. As many of you probably know, or maybe don't, I'm a UConn grad, University of Connecticut, and we are known for, I mentioned our football team on a previous podcast, but we're known for basketball. And our basketball team, man, they look good. Opened the year, I believe it was ranked 24th or 25th, got up to 20th, and now, as we sit here recording this podcast with the latest rankings update, we are number 8 in the country, sitting at 8-0, and I just got to say, shout out to my Huskies, because this is the best team I've seen in like a decade. So before we get into any NFL talk,
you also have some subtle product placement in the back too. I see a Huskies. Is that like a cone or a hat? Yeah, there it is.
Little UConn Santa hat. Yeah, absolutely. So, no, it was a good weekend for sports overall. Good weekend for both the alma maters of me and my girlfriend. So we're having some fun. But hey, we got some NFL stuff to talk about. A lot of pretty big developments over this past week. One of the major ones happening last night, actually. So the Packers hung with the Eagles, I think, a lot better than a lot of people expected they would. But the main question coming out of last night is one that's kind of been lingering over the NFL world for most of this season, I'll say. Is it Jordan Love time in Green Bay? So Rodgers left the game with a rib injury. Ironically enough, almost a year to the day that Rodgers replaced Brett Favre on a Thanksgiving Day game due to injury. And then Rodgers went on to start next season, the season following. So will we get a repeat with Jordan Love? Maddie, what do you think about just the situation overall? Is it Jordan Love time in Green Bay, or are they going to stick with Rodgers for a little bit longer, or should they stick with Rodgers for a little bit longer?
At this point, I feel like Rodgers has lost the locker room. I mean, you saw that team kind of come out and throw support around Love whenever we watched him play. Obviously, you expect him to be able to step into that role and make some things happen. You're not expecting a ton because he has been sitting, but at the same time, like, you've had at least a year to be able to learn the playbook. You know what's going on at the bare minimum. So I think as far as like what we saw from Love, there was nothing to deter or to hinder them from playing him in the future. I think that it's time that we start letting Jordan Love take over. The thing is the Green Bay kind of shot themselves in the foot, right? Because ideally you get rid of Rodgers and Love's your guy, and you kind of just go through the season with that plan going into the offseason. I don't know that they can actually do that the way that they set up his contract. I don't think that there's going to be any team that's willing to trade for Rodgers, especially with the way that he's played this year, the drama that he's brought the past 2 seasons. I don't think that anyone's going to be willing to take the risk of making a trade and taking on that financial responsibility. And I don't think Green Bay can kind of get out from underneath it. So I do think that we'll see Jordan Love for a little bit, but how long, I'm unsure.
Yeah, I do think just logically, it's probably time to sit Rodgers down for this year. I mean, you can reevaluate what happens after that point if you want, but look, they're not going to make the playoffs. Rodgers, I believe we have this quote that he had said, as long as we're not mathematically eliminated, I'd like to be out there, but they might as well be, right? Like, logically, they're not going to go undefeated the rest of the way and get all that help. It's just not likely to happen. And now you've got a chance to actually see what you have in Jordan Love. He looked pretty good in a short stint that he had in that game against one of the NFL's best defenses. And the Packers are at a point where they have to find out what they have in Jordan Love. I mean, we've honestly been talking about that for the last couple of years, but next year we're heading into year 4 for Jordan Love in the NFL. Like it has flown by. This dude's rookie contract is about to run out, and the Packers might not know what he is. Like, you have to let him play. Rodgers, it's also tough and a little bit ambiguous with him as well, because it's like, is this fall off, completely age related? Is this a sign of just what he's going to be for the rest of his career until he hangs it up? Or is he just completely hampered by these injuries? His thumb is basically broken. Now he's got this rib injury. Like, they're in a really, really, really tough spot. But I think step one to maybe getting a little clarity on things is you let Jordan Love go the rest of this year, and at least you know what he is, or you can see what he might be.
Right. Even just from just a football in general standpoint, you don't want your leader coming out and saying this, like, and if there's a chance, I'll be out there. If not, don't count on me. Like, that's up to the coaching staff. That's their decision, right? This just shows that he thinks that his say is the end all be all. And I just feel like that's very deterring for a team. And even for me, I feel like that should be for the fan base.
Yeah, I do think at the very least, I mean, Rodgers is realistic about the situation. He's not like, oh, I got to be out there no matter what. Like, this is my team, all this. And while that is a confidence that you may like to see out of him, I think we know that that's within Rodgers. He's been a pretty good leader. I mean, a great quarterback for his entire career up to this point. It's just, it's kind of hitting a weird, rough spot now. I think he is realistic about what we just talked about. Like, the Packers, they have to see what they have in Love. He realized that when they drafted Jordan Love, that eventually this was going to come to fruition. And now that Rodgers is not only playing bad, but banged up, I mean, hey, he may want to, at least get healthy and not continue tanking his own stock for if he ends up on another team next year, or if he can be the guy in Green Bay for another year. So we'll see how that develops. But the team that the Packers lost to by, again, less than I expected, was the Philadelphia Eagles, part of the NFC East. And I just want to talk about the entire NFC East would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. We had the same conversation about the AFC East a couple weeks ago. Now it's the NFC East. Maddie, do you think it stays that way? What are the chances? Give me a number, give me a percentage that the entire NFC East makes the playoffs.
It's possible. I don't think that it's going to happen. I think that, especially with the Giants as banged up as they are, I have a feeling they're going to fall out. I mean, so the Giants and the Commanders play each other twice in the next, I think, 4 weeks that are coming up.
I believe they play each other this week is the first of those matchups.
Yeah, and then I think 2 weeks after. I could be wrong, but yes, you are right. This week's going to determine a lot. I would say the chances of all those teams making it in, probably percentage-wise, like 64. I suck at percentages. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that there's a good chance either the Commanders or the Giants are going to kind of get knocked out of there. Yeah, but I think it's a done deal with Cowboys-Eagles.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Cowboys-Eagles, barring a catastrophic meltdown, are both going to make the playoffs. I think you look around the rest of the NFC and you look at the odds of it happening. I would say it's pretty low as well. The Giants being the team that I would think will probably fall out, and the Commanders, I mean, hey, with how well Taylor Heineke's playing and that defense as well, I could see them squeaking in. But you look around the rest of the divisions, I mean, you got the Vikings are going to make it. The 49ers.
Coming back.
I mean, the record's not as good as we'd like it to be to call them a lock, but I feel like they're borderline a lock. And then the Bucks, I'm just going to say, will probably win the NFC South. I mean, I don't know. I still don't know what's going on in that.
We don't know what's happening there.
Someone's coming out of that. Put it this way. One team is coming out of that division. So you'll have the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Vikings, call it the Bucks for now. And you got the Niners. That leaves 2 more spots. I imagine, I'll say probably the Seahawks can get in over either the Giants or the Commanders. But honestly, I don't think that 64% or whatever you put on it is too out of the question. It's just, the NFC is just weak. It's just weak. Like it's top heavy. The entire NFC South has a losing record, every single team in it, whereas the entire NFC East has a winning record. Like there are 7 winning records in the NFC right now, and 4 of them are in the NFC East. So it's definitely not impossible. I would put it more at 40-ish, 50-ish% just because these teams are going to cannibalize each other a little bit. I mean, they're going to play each other a bunch still the rest of the way. So it's probably unlikely, but man, I did not think we'd be here regardless with the NFC East. Like, this division has vastly exceeded mine. I think everybody else's expectations. One thing 100%. I do want to touch on with the Commanders, though. Did you see the Sean Taylor statue shenanigans?
Statue? Do we still have to call it that? That is just that's the cherry on top of the Sunday of everybody just saying, just start over. Just burn the entire franchise to the ground and start from the beginning. Because it almost looked like one of those fake acrylic guys that like college teams. I don't know if you've ever been into like locker room. OU has those fake acrylic guys that they showcase their uniforms on. Yeah. That's what it looked like to me. I didn't even realize that it was wire until we got a closer look. But that's pathetic, and Sean deserved better.
It's even worse. It's like you can make that for literally any player. Like you can throw a jersey number on that mannequin and call it a statue of anybody you want. It's like, I don't know. I just hope, I think in these types of situations with the Commanders and how pitiful they've been the last few years, just top to bottom, we have a tendency maybe to pile on and maybe be unfair about things. Let me be clear. There's nothing unfair about the criticism that this statue is getting. Like, you are trying to honor a player like Sean Taylor and you do it that way. I mean, again, it looks like they plucked a mannequin out of JCPenney and threw a jersey on it. It, like you said, it almost looks like when a team is revealing a new jersey, like that's what they're showing on in a display case like that. And sure, it's fine for that. It's not fine to honor a guy. What are you doing?
I've seen better memorials for like Kobe Bryant that's a mural painted on the side of the building, like all around LA. You can't go a block without seeing them. Like, that's a better memorial than whatever this statue is. It's just
something
awful.
That has their actual likeness on it, not a jersey that you can put on literally anything. Someone could print a Taylor Heineke jersey and throw it over that. Like, what are you doing?
My favorite part is they had, I think it was the Nike jersey, Adidas pants or shoes, and then Reebok something else. And I'm like, it's not even uniform. Like, it just doesn't make sense at all.
It's just lazy. It's a weird, I don't even know if I can call it a PR move, because it's not like it's a super timely thing. I mean, the Sean Taylor honoring him has been going on for a long time, and it just feels like such a weird move by Dan Snyder. But we're accustomed to that at this point. That's really nothing new. So moving on, we want to get to something that happened actually on the Thanksgiving game. So the Buffalo Bills came out with a win against the Detroit Lions, actually becoming the first team since 2016 to win back-to-back games at Ford Field, because the Lions haven't done it. So that's kind of embarrassing for the Lions. But the bigger storyline coming out of it is Von Miller. He came out of it with a knee injury. Still some speculation as to what exactly it is. It seems like it's a meniscus. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. But, Maddie, how much does this impact the Buffalo Bills, and what does this mean for their Super Bowl chances?
I've talked about this a lot because I think this has been a very prominent question. I actually don't know that this affects the Bills as much as what people think, at least going forward. Where we're really going to see the impact is when they play the Chiefs again, when we see that rematch, because that's why they went out and got Vaughn in the first place, is they wanted a pass rush that would be able to stop Patrick Mahomes. That's been their biggest hang up in trying to make it to the Super Bowl. So I don't think that we're going to see an immediate change on that. To be honest with you, I think that the biggest impact is going to come from how Josh Allen responds to them resetting their offense, and how he comes back from things. But we do have Greg Rousseau's coming back, and then I can never say his name, AJ Epstein. I always mispronounce the name. I even wrote it out in my notes just to make sure I could say it correctly. I can't. And then, Ed Oliver has kind of stepped into that leadership role and just said, we're going to be fine. So I don't think we're going to see a huge difference until, like I said, they play the Chiefs. But I do think that obviously it is a big loss for the Bills.
Yeah, and it's not only the difference of, not having him. It's they don't know how long they're going to be without him for. They're kind of in a wait and see with this injury right now. They basically said Vaughn is going to go the next week to 10 days, see how he feels, see how it's holding up. Is this going to be something he can play through? It very well may be. And if it is, how much is it going to hamper his performance? I mean, of course, I think if you get, 70% of Von Miller, that's still better than not having him out there.
Especially the rest of those guys come back healthy.
Yeah, for as big of an impact as he makes, even from just a leadership perspective, I think they'd love to have him out there, at less than 100% if he can play through it. So we'll just have to wait and see what the universe holds for Von Miller in the next 10 days or so. But I'm sure for Bills fans, it's got to be agonizing having to wait and see, because he's probably the heart of their defense. He's their big free agent acquisition. And I mean, he knows what it's like to win a Super Bowl. So
absolutely. And it's kind of like one of those injuries that you're already down. They've had not the greatest past couple of games, and now you're getting kicked while you're down to lose Vaughn.
Exactly. So we'll have to see if this is sort of a, you get to rock bottom and then go up from there, or if this is, the beginning of the end for the Bills 2022 Super Bowl chance, at least. I'm not going to be that dramatic about it. I don't think it is, but it's definitely a bit of a gut punch. From a Broncos legend to the current Broncos again. This Russell Wilson clip with Mike Purcell was hilarious. I feel like we all kind of were Mike Purcell in that moment.
Yes.
Just scream at Russell Wilson. We're like, yeah, what is wrong with you? Stop being so bad. Stop being just a soundboard for cringe sound bites. It's just been a bad year for the Broncos and Russell Wilson. Maddie, what do you make of that clip? And what do you make of just the Broncos now? I feel like we've talked about them several times, but it hasn't gotten any better since the other times we've talked about this team.
I mean, we watched Mike Purcell do it for the rest of us. Everybody was cheering from their living rooms. If you just saw the clip online, you were cheering online. He did it for every fantasy owner of Russell Wilson. He did it for every Broncos fan. Good for Mike Purcell. To be honest with you, I think what this means is it's just a ticking time bomb until Hackett loses the job. We're going to see a new coach in Denver, but to me, I don't see how you get better from here. Like, what's going to change? Really, what it's going to take is for Russ to completely come around, and I just don't think that they have it in them. There's something off there.
And I think, they've pushed it so far now. The Broncos are 3-8. They didn't get rid of Hackett earlier than this. So now it's sort of like, almost what's the point of firing him before the season ends? It might as well let him finish out the year, reevaluate after this, because let's be real. What is 5 weeks of an interim head coach going to do for this team? It's
nothing.
You might get a little bit of a morale boost or something, but I feel like this team is too far gone. Having a defensive coordinator or other, assistant coach take over the head coaching gig for the next couple of weeks isn't really going to do a lot. So they're kind of just going to suffer with Hackett for the next few weeks, I think, until this season closes out. But I do think it's probably the end of Hackett in Denver. One of the most spectacular head coaching failings I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and I didn't think it could get worse than Urban Meyer last year. And I don't know for sure if it is, because Urban was just such a off the field problems and general incompetence guy, but this is almost worse. Like, this is just on the field incompetence. Like, this is horrible by every sense of the word. So Hackett's probably done.
Hackett is done. It's just, I haven't seen a team that struggles this badly on third down in so long. I mean, it's 3 and out almost every single drive anyways, but they cannot convert on third down literally to save their life. If there were guns to these players' heads, they couldn't do it.
Yeah. And you want to talk about, last week we had reporters asking Zach Wilson, hey, do you feel like you let the defense down? That has been the Russell Wilson special all year long, because this Broncos defense is good. Actually let up a few more points to the Panthers than I would have expected, because there was that whole stat of if the Broncos had just scored 18 points in every game, they would have been like 9-1. Well, they finally allowed 23 points to the Panthers, so they would have lost this game anyway. But yeah, that defense has been overperforming, and I could see why they'd be upset with Russ and just the general vibe of that team and everything that's transpired this year. So Speaking of people being upset with Russell Wilson, you may remember, everyone listening at home, this Russell Wilson on the plane storyline doing the high knees again. Probably arguably a more cringeworthy event for him this year than even the Broncos country, Let's Ride, or the Danger Witch commercials. The airplane may have been worse, because I think we can all relate to seeing that person on an airplane and how annoyed we would be. We had someone else cause problems on an airplane this week. Odell Beckham Jr. Was apparently taken off an airplane. This is a really weird story. Maddie, I'll just cut right to the chase. Who's worse to deal with on an airplane now, Russell Wilson or Odell Beckham?
So we're still having reports that are coming back about the Odell situation. I don't really know exactly what happened at first. So the official report says that there was a medical emergency. I looked into it. But then reports from the actual plane, from people who were on the plane, the stewardess, all of that have kind of leaked out, said that he just refused to put on his seatbelt and then was asked to evacuate, or the entire plane was going to have to be deplaned. And then his lawyer comes out and says, well, he wasn't unresponsive like they said. He was in and out of sleep. And I guess when he finally woke to, they were put on your seatbelt, and he said, oh, okay, I'll do it. And they said, no, it's too late now. You have to leave, or everybody else has to leave. I don't know what's happening. Either way, if you're going to pass out on a plane, I've been there. We've all caught red eyes, right? What do? You put on your seatbelt first thing so you can go to sleep and nobody's messing with you, right? I just feel like it for a flight attendant to get to the point where he's asking Odell to leave the plane. Like, they've asked you multiple times. So I don't know that I really buy that portion of the story. To me, I'm still going to go with, I feel like Wilson is worse just because, like, you're on a long flight and you have somebody just doing just insane things. And it would be different if, like, he was playing well. But then for him to get off and play the way that he did, it's just like, what was the point? Odell is just kind of like he's that asshole that doesn't know how to fly, apparently.
Yeah, to me, one of the big details when determining which of these two is worse to come out from the Odell story was the flight ended up taking off 2 hours later than originally scheduled.
Oh, see, I didn't see that. I thought this was like a quick thing. Okay.
No, this turned into a 2-hour delay. I believe the plane was at least taxiing or about to be taxiing when the Odell ordeal started. No pun intended. That was awful. But yeah, I guess it's a matter of what would you rather deal with as a passenger? You know, your flight takes off, it gets to where it's going, no problem, but you have some moron doing high knees in the aisleway, or you have a flight that is painless once it's in the air, but gets delayed for 2 hours. I'm with you.
You make a fair point.
Yeah, I do think that, you know, Odell has to be at fault here a little bit. I mean, this doesn't just happen. I don't think, like you said, put your seatbelt on at first, and then you don't have to worry about anything after the fact. I feel like the story ultimately falls somewhere in the middle where maybe the flight attendants did overreact a little bit and it didn't need to get to that point. But also, Odell, I don't think is completely innocent in this situation either. So, final verdict: worst person to have on the plane. I'm gonna go with Russell Wilson. I can't do the high knees.
We just swapped. You should be an attorney. You flopped me.
I got
so it's a 50-50.
I'd want to knock him out. I'd want to just get up and just clothesline him in the middle of the aisleway. Like, there's just
because you know him. So I feel like when you know somebody, they get on your nerves more than somebody. I just kind of feel like if I was on that plane, I'd be like, wow, like this is something to tweet about. Like I got to experience this. It's Odell. It's like normal people, right? You're on an American airline flight. I just feel like when you're on that long of a plane ride, that's really annoying. But you already swayed me. So you're going Wilson. I'm going Odell.
Yeah. The two hour delay is definitely annoying, but coming from somebody who just recently had to sit in an airport for 7 hours and get their flight canceled, I'm like, well, doesn't sound so bad. If you were trying to make a connection, then probably it's even worse because then you're getting all your travel plans messed up. But I'm going to go with Russell Wilson on this one. Either way, I don't know why I'm fidgeting with this. It was sitting next to me, but they're both clowns. So take that. I actually have green hair next to me too, but I'm not going to mess with that right now.
It turned into Marcus Smart now.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's keep with the Broncos theme. Why not just keep piling on the Broncos? So I came across sort of a parallel with these two teams, both giving up a ton of picks for a quarterback. And now this upcoming draft, neither one will have their first round pick. The Rams at least got a Super Bowl out of this last year. The Broncos, I don't even know what to say. But Madi, do you think one of these teams is more screwed than the other as far as their future is concerned? Look ahead for the next, 2 or 3 years, because both of these rosters are still built to compete in general. They just need to iron some things out, whether it's coaching or whatever it may be. So which of these two teams do you think is in worse shape right now, the Broncos or the Rams?
I think that the Broncos are in worse shape because they don't know what's going on. We know that they're about to lose a head coach. They way overpaid for a quarterback who's just underperforming, to say the least. The Rams have just struck a bad chord of bad luck, right? It's just everybody's injured. I mean, I thought McVay was going to be on the injury report after he got just like dome shook. That was rough. That was bad. But no, I mean, they have a ton of injuries that have hit this team. McVay is still incredible at what he does. I believe that coach is they have something to build around at least, right? They have the foundation. They are just going to have to do some work to get back to where they were. Obviously, like the offensive line needs help. Everybody needs to get healthy. But no, the Broncos, I don't really see anything any good that they can really build upon like the Rams have.
Yeah, it is funny with the Broncos because obviously the trade with the Seahawks, so the Seahawks have their first round pick. The Seahawks are going to end up with the 2 picks in the ranges that I thought they would end up with, right? But reversed. I thought that the Broncos pick that they would get would end up being sort of a late first because the Broncos would have a good year, and that the Seahawks' own pick would be higher up because the Seahawks, led by Geno Smith, or in the time of the offseason, we didn't know if it'd be Geno or Drew Lock or what it would be. I thought the Seahawks would be one of the most uncompetitive teams in the NFL this year. Man, how wrong I was. And now they're going to sit here with the Broncos pick that is going to end up being somewhere in the top 10, possibly higher. But their own pick is going to be, in the teens or 20s, or if they make the playoffs, it'll be around the 20s. So they're going to end up with the picks I thought they would get, just reverse. I agree with you. I think the Broncos are more screwed just because they are under the massive weight of this Russell Wilson contract. And if he doesn't figure it out to some extent over the next couple of years, I mean, the dead cap on that contract, they cannot do anything with
They can't do anything. They're tied down.
The only out that they have after maybe next year is if they can get some other poor, desperate team that thinks I can fix him to like pay half of his contract or so. But either way, the Broncos are going to be paying a lot of money for either bad or no production to Russell Wilson if he doesn't figure it out. The Rams, though, I just wanted to bring it up with the Rams because the Lions have their pick. And that pick is going to end up being a lot better than we thought. The Lions, if they would stop winning so many damn games, they could have 2 top 10 picks, but their record is going to get them into, the teens or so, with the Rams pick, maybe top 10. The Rams are just, you had the whole F them picks strategy, and man, it's biting them way faster than I thought it would. They won the Super Bowl, so ultimately they probably don't care that much, but I figured that strategy would, come back and bite them maybe a couple years from now, where it's like, okay, they didn't have their 2023 first round pick, but it doesn't matter for the 2023 season or the 2024 season. You might look back later and be like, oh, it would be nice to have that young ascending player. But I did not think they'd be sitting here with such a terrible record. What are they? Are they at 3-8? I think it was. Yeah, 3-8, last place in the NFC West. So the Rams are struggling, but at the very least with the Rams, when it comes to a potential rebuild, let's say worst case scenario, this is the end for the Rams as we know them, like the core players of this team. They can at least trade away guys to get some first round picks back going forward. Like they can trade away Cooper Kupp, who's not the youngest receiver. I mean, I don't think they'll do it like this offseason or anything, but if they get that desperate, they can trade away Cooper Kupp and probably get a first and a second like the Packers did for Davante Adams. They can trade away, I don't want to say Aaron Donald, but I mean, they could do it. They have assets at the very least.
Right.
The Broncos have some assets too that aren't Russell Wilson, but not to the point that the Rams do. So I think the Rams are a little bit less screwed, still more screwed than I would have thought they'd be coming into the year, though. It's definitely been
this season. 100%, both of these teams are screwed.
So they lost Allen Robinson for the year. Obviously, wasn't
that was rough to watch
anyway, but it's kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, all right, we lose Cooper Kupp. Hey, let's see what we can get out of Allen Robinson. Hey, how about you don't? You just have to deal with Ben Skoranek now and Tutu Atwell or whoever they're going to be throwing out there now to end the season, all with Bryce Perkins at quarterback. So,
and your head coach is probably in concussion protocol.
Your head coach is in the blue tent waiting to come out. So it's tough for the Rams, but I think they'll be okay in the next 2 to 3 years, even if this year is massively disappointing considering what they thought coming in. Another team that's been a little disappointing lately is the Ravens. So Lamar Jackson lashing out on Twitter with this ridiculous tweet, now deleted. Very vulgar tweet. We actually pulled it up on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, but I will read the somewhat clean version for our younger viewers at home. Boy, STFU, y'all be capping too much on this app. Never smelt a football field. Never did anything but eat, phallic object.
Use your imagination.
Man, Lamar was angry. So that tweet was in response to somebody saying basically that the Ravens need to let Lamar go because they need to build a more well-rounded roster because games like this should not be coming down to a 67-yard field goal attempt from Justin Tucker, which, by the way, is hilarious that the opposing team even needs to sweat that out because they did.
Well, what's crazy is I saw people all on Twitter that were just like everybody expected him to make it. Like at what point have we reached that we're all like disappointed that somebody missed a 67-yard field goal attempt?
It's almost like
wild to me.
If they send him out there, it's like, oh, if they have enough confidence that he's going to make it, it's like, okay, every time I've seen Justin Tucker kick a field goal, like it's gone in outside of these very, very rare times. So I believe he has the record at 66. So it wasn't out of the question. But again, I don't think the original tweeter here is necessarily wrong. I don't think the Ravens should let Lamar go, but these games, you should not have a game against the Jaguars that is coming down to a 67-yard field goal attempt and then losing to the Jaguars. Like, this is bad. This is really bad. And we've talked about it at length about the Ravens' shortcomings about not having weapons, O-line issues. I mean, even their running backs have been hurt basically all year. Mark Andrews has been hurt for a stretch of the year. So it's been tough for the Ravens, but I don't know. Where do you think the Ravens go from here? Like what is next? They extend Lamar and then get him weapons? Is it that simple, or are they beyond that point?
I mean, I do think that we have to remember the Ravens do have weapons. All of them are out with injuries. I mean, the majority of their weapons are injured at this moment. I think that where you start is you have to do something different on the offensive line. I think some of that frustration that we're seeing from Lamar, though we don't encourage it, support it, I don't think it's correct. I think that you hold that stuff in or let your teammates hear in the locker room, whatever. It doesn't need to hit social media. But at the same time, like, I can understand this frustration because people who aren't watching the game at an intricate level, who don't understand how things all have to kind of mesh to make things work, we're watching Lamar scramble for his life. And basically the Ravens have just like put it all on him. Like, if what we're giving you isn't there, just make something happen. Well, they're not giving him anything. So he's on a make it happen every snap. And I think that because he's as great as he is disguising a lot of the issues that offensive line has. But like, I mean, people were asking me for fantasy advice this week, and they were asking about Ravens players. And I was like, listen, I want to do it because we're going to see the Ravens struggle without Ronnie Stanley. Like, just having that one piece gone makes a huge difference. So for me, something that they have to focus on is the offensive line. And I think secondary to that is, what are you doing defensively? Because some changes need to happen. I think that they're now seeing, like, I think without Wink there, they're having to redefine what their identity is, and they're having issues with that. So I think that possibly you look at making a change at defensive coordinator, or you figure out what's going on there. But offensive line and then trying to figure out what their identity is on the defensive side of the ball have to be priorities going into next season. But I think as far as what you're seeing now, I think this is what we're going to get from the Ravens the rest of the year.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
We've seen their offense be not nearly as dynamic as we're used to, but I think you just want to see Lamar be a little bit more composed in these situations as far as his conduct, like on Twitter and stuff like that, because that's really bad. Like, we all know that you guys are disappointed you lost to the Jaguars. It is embarrassing to an extent. But the Ravens are 7-4. They are still at the top of their division. They're still going to make the playoffs, probably. And you look at their upcoming schedule. I mean, Broncos, Steelers, Browns, Falcons, Steelers, Bengals. The only thing you have anywhere in there is some relatively tough defenses. The only offense that scares you is the Bengals at the very end of the year. Maybe the Browns if Deshaun Watson comes back and looks like his old self. But otherwise, it's like the Ravens could go undefeated to close out the year, and I don't really think anybody would bat an eye. Like, it wouldn't be shocking based on that schedule. And then they're sitting here at 13-4. Or, conservatively 12-5, or I'll call it worst case scenario, 11-6, and they're just fine. So I just think Lamar needs to do a better job of not feeding these trolls, because it doesn't help anybody. I mean, it's a bad look, and it's going to make people, be on that dude's side. The attention that he gave that tweet of that dude saying they should get rid of Lamar and, get a more well-rounded roster. Nobody's going to see that if Lamar doesn't respond to it, or at least it's not going to get nearly as much traction. So I don't know. I think Lamar just needs to maybe stay off social media for a little bit, at least after bad games like that. Because
give yourself a break. Yeah.
He tweeted that like right after the game ended. Like, it was not long after. So it's like he's going right on Twitter, searching his name or searching Ravens or searching in this just pile of just shit of people criticizing his team, because you can find that if you're looking for it, and engaging with it. And I just don't think that helps anybody. So Lamar, maybe just, go to the spa or something after a bad game like that. Go for a walk.
Exactly.
Go do something else, because that's just not constructive. It's not helping anybody.
Yeah. Do not disturb is a fantastic tool. Use it.
Absolutely. So we brought up Zach Wilson a little bit earlier. One of the bigger storylines of last week, again, was Zach Wilson saying he didn't feel like he let his defense down. And ultimately that led to Zach Wilson being benched for Mike White this week. Yeah. The storyline with him being benched, at least coming from head coach Robert Saleh, was it was a reset for Zach Wilson. Well, Mike White played great. Led the Jets to a big win over the Bears, who, in fairness, yes, had to start Trevor Siemian. We all know that. Yeah. But Mike White looked really good again, which he has in stretches over the course of his career so far. Is this the end for Zach Wilson in New York?
I don't think it is. I think this was I'm going to make an example out of you. We don't behave like this type of situation. I mean, I will say I think it was a bit excessive to see him like in normal clothes on the sidelines. The picture, the popular picture that was all around Twitter and everything else, where he just looked like somebody pissed in his Cheerios. That was tough to see. But it was a lesson he had to learn, right? He was acting the way that we see Aaron Rodgers act without earning that entitlement, I guess we should say. What was interesting to me was to see the support of his teammates around Mike White, because after the game, everybody was like, Mike White this, Mike White that. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, the locker room obviously wants this to be Mike White's team. So where do they go from here? I think they've invested so much in Zach that we're going to see a little bit more from him. But it is interesting to kind of see. We obviously know where the locker room stands. So I do think that they might give Mike White another shot maybe this upcoming week. But then it's also hard to say because Mike White is either decently good or really, really, really bad. Like what we saw at the end of the season last year.
All right. Here's my take on the situation. I think it's the end for Zach Wilson.
Wow. Bold take.
I think it's the end for Zach Wilson in New York. I don't see how, at the very least, like you said, this week they go back to Zach Wilson. I think you got to give Mike White another week. And I just think Mike White, the worst case scenario for how he can play is almost the best that they've gotten out of Zach Wilson this year. Like,
that's true.
Mike White, if he plays badly, it's not going to be anything new for the Jets. But you look at how he played. He allowed Garrett Wilson to be sort of the star receiver that they've been looking for him to be. He revived Elijah Moore. That dude came out of witness protection this week. I mean, at that point, like, it's what can't he do? So Mike White, he gave this team a much needed jolt. I think it's the end for Zach Wilson in New York. I don't know where he ends up. I don't know if he ends up the backup on the Jets. I'm looking ahead to next season now. I don't think it's Mike White in New York either. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that next year, the Jets starting quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it makes too much sense. They have Robert Saleh, the 49ers old defensive coordinator, as their head coach. They have the cap space to sign him. Jimmy's not going to break the bank, I don't think. He's going to cost like a decent amount. I mean, he's playing well, and he's obviously going to help this team. But that's what the Jets need. This roster is built to win outside of the quarterback. The defense is playing great. They have these young offensive weapons. They'll get Breece Hall back at some point next year. And I think Jimmy G just makes too much sense. So I'm going to make that call. I think Jimmy G to the Jets happens next year, whether Zach Wilson is a backup or if he gets shipped off for a couple of picks to somebody, again, who wants to try and I can fix him type thing. I don't know, but I don't think we see Zach Wilson as a consistent long-term starter for the New York Jets again.
I do think that there's a chance that there could be some changes next year. I don't know that they go to Jimmy G just because we know that Jimmy G does have his faults. And to be successful with this offense, like whoever's at quarterback is going to have to get the ball out quick, like 2 seconds or under. Like Jimmy G, I don't know that he has the capability to be able to do that. He could. I also think that it would take a lot to get – I don't know. I don't know about that, but I do like where your head's at on that.
Yeah, I think if the Jets just waste this young core that they have trying to figure out who their quarterback is going to be and, continuing to throw years away with a guy like Zach Wilson or, God forbid, a guy like say they name Mike White the starter next year. I mean, I like the guy, but I don't know about all that. I think if you go with a guy like Jimmy G, and I've hated on Jimmy G for a while and said, I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's a top 10 guy, but I think he's enough to get this team over the hump and sort of lead it to be a 49ers of the East type of situation. I mean, they're built the same way. Obviously, they don't have as dynamic of playmakers. There's no McCaffrey. There's no Debo. There's no George Kittle. But I mean, Garrett Wilson's no slouch. Breece Hall is no slouch. Elijah Moore is still there for now and playing well again, it seems. So I could see it happening. The Jets got to do something at quarterback, though. Even if it's not Jimmy G,
I agree.
I don't think it's Zach. I don't think it's Mike. And they're not going to have a high enough draft pick because of their hot start to go get one of the elite guys of this class. So I have to wait and see on the Jets.
I do have to say, for anybody who saw the Elijah Moore clip, because everybody after the Thursday night game was like, I just want somebody to hold me the way that Josh Allen holds Diggs. And for me, like my relationship goals, I want somebody to talk about me the way that Elijah Moore talked about that football that he was like talking sweet to. That's all I want out of life.
Elijah Moore, you can never say that he doesn't love the game. I mean, to a point where it's almost concerning. So, hey, I'm glad Elijah Moore has again come out of witness protection thanks to Mike White or the coaching staff or a combination of the two. Too electric of a playmaker to just be sitting on the bench and never getting targeted. So, all right.
Agreed.
Called Jimmy G to the Jets. Speaking of potential moves this upcoming offseason, Josh Jacobs just torched the Seattle Seahawks. Over 300 all-purpose yards in that game, including, I believe it was an 86 or 84-yard game-winning touchdown in overtime. I did not see this coming from Josh Jacobs this year. I did not. I mean, he's in a contract year, but he's one of those guys that, like, in fantasy football, every year I look at his name on a draft board and I'm just like, I'm all set. Like, I'm good. Like, he's too high of a pick. He's not going to be an elite RB1 for me, and I don't want to pay up for what I think will be like a mid-level RB2 type of guy. I'm good. I was wrong, apparently. I think he's like a top 3 fantasy running back now after that performance. So Josh Jacobs torches the Seahawks, continues a career season. Where does he end up next year? Because this is a contract year. Do you think he ends up back in Vegas?
I think Vegas is going to have to figure out what they're going to do. It's hard to picture what they're going to do when you don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to keep the coach that's there? Are they going to make changes at any level? You don't know. So I don't really know what Vegas is going to do. Obviously, we know that they're happy with the way he's performed, but they didn't take him up on that option. So do they franchise tag him, or are they going to give him a contract? I don't know. They would be smart to keep him, in my opinion. But if that doesn't happen, I could absolutely see him with the Baltimore Ravens, solely because what we're seeing right now is they're kind of letting the flap open and just kind of giving him the ball and saying, do what you do, make something happen. And that's exactly the way that the Ravens designed runs play out, right? So what the Ravens do is they get the ball into the hands of somebody who can run, and they say, make good decisions. And they don't try to get too crazy with it. It's not super formal schematic runs. And so I think that he would be super successful there. But I definitely see that as being a home.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that as well. You look at the Ravens cap space next year. This is kind of what I was looking at for looking for fits for Josh Jacobs outside of Las Vegas. Team cap space for next year, the Ravens currently have $38 million in cap space. And if they're going to re-sign Lamar, most of that's going to get allocated to him, probably all of it if we're being realistic. So they'd have to move some things around. But no, I like that fit a lot. I think we don't know if J.K. Dobbins is unfortunately ever going to get healthy enough to the point where he's the guy that we saw at Ohio State. Gus Edwards is always fighting injuries himself. And then beyond that, their depth is non-existent. So an elite back like Josh Jacobs that they can rely on would definitely do wonders for them.
It would help protect Lamar a little bit.
For sure. The other spot that I looked at, really one of the only ones that made sense for teams that had cap space, was the Atlanta Falcons. So Cordero Patterson is their quote-unquote feature back, even though the touches the last few weeks have been a little confusing. He's only getting paid about $5 million a year, and the Falcons have $66 million of cap space heading into next year. They are not on the hook for having to pay a quarterback coming up. I mean, they are not going to be signing Marcus Mariota to some big extension. They're not going to be signing Desmond Ridder to some big extension. So I don't think we have to worry about that. They just seem to have cap space, and that's a position that I could see them maybe looking at and being like, hey, we can enhance our team with this. Why not go do it? The other teams with like higher cap space, the Bears have a ton, but I feel like their running back situation they're in pretty good shape with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert.
They have other needs.
The Giants have plenty of cap space, but if anything, they're just going to re-sign Saquon. They're not going to replace Saquon with Josh Jacobs. Doesn't make any sense. Patriots aren't going to pay for a running back. The Seahawks have Kenneth Walker. The Bengals have Joe Mixon. The Texans, maybe. I mean, we like Dameon Pierce, but that's the situation I wouldn't be shocked to see it turn into a two-headed sort of thing.
And
no, I think the Falcons make sense.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that that's a great guess. We'll say.
And hopefully they can, again, for all of my Kyle Pitts listeners, those that tune in strictly for the Kyle Pitts content, hopefully they can get a quarterback that can enhance both Pitts and any other offensive weapon they may bring into the fold. Because hey, if we go into next year and it's the Marcus Mariota show again, and they bring in Josh Jacobs, I'm not sure how much that's really going to change things, but who knows? So
who knows?
A big theme of this past week was backup quarterback. So Madi came up with this idea. We like to do these drafts every week. we decided to do a backup quarterback draft. This past week, we saw Mike White, we saw Trevor Siemian, we saw Kyle Allen, we saw some action for Jordan Love. I know I'm missing guys. This is just off the top of my head. But we saw a bunch of backup quarterbacks get some shine this week. We wanted to see who can compile the best list of 5 backup quarterbacks or the draft of them. So we're going to go back and forth like we always do. And you guys will decide whose list of backup quarterbacks is the best. Now, we may have to define here what a backup quarterback is. That's what I was going to say.
I feel like we should do that. I think that it should be who we thought was starting from the beginning of the year. Because do we include Geno Smith? That was one of my big questions.
Yeah, I would say no on Geno Smith because he wasn't even a guy that was like a definite backup coming into the year. He was just in a firm competition with Drew Lock. I mean, I'm looking at depth charts
Brissett,
and I'm like,
Brissett. Technically, he's going to be a backup.
So Brissett's a sneaky one. I think Brissett's totally fair game in this.
Okay, I agree.
He's going to be a backup now going forward and probably a damn good one at that. So, but you look at guys like Trevor Siemian, firm backup. I mean, even if he starts again for Justin Fields, like we know that Trevor Siemian's a backup level guy. I think Jordan Love, still a firm backup, even if today the Packers come out and say he's starting the rest of the year. For now, he's still considered a backup. So listen, I'm ready to throw the flag. If Maddie gives me anybody that I don't think is a real backup quarterback, I'm not ashamed. So
call your own fouls.
Yeah, we will consider it as we go. So let's get into who has the first pick. Who did first for Thanksgiving draft? Was it you?
I forgot.
I think you had the first pick because I picked. Did you take mashed potatoes off the board last week with the first pick?
Yeah, but I thought you went mac and cheese first pick.
I may have gone mac and cheese first pick. I don't remember now.
I can't remember either.
Huh. All right. Should we flip a coin? I don't have a coin. You can take the first pick. Take the
Thomas's.
first pick.
Are you sure? Oh,
you pick first.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go first. I'm going to take Jimmy G. Technically, he's still a backup because starting. I think if you want to throw a flag on it, I can do another one.
I want to hear the explanation first.
Well, because technically it was Trey Lance's team coming in. It's just Trey Lance got hurt. So for me, Jimmy G was considered a backup, even though he held the position before. What do you think?
I'll allow it. I mean, Jimmy is so out of my head as being a backup that it didn't even register. But I don't think you're wrong necessarily. Coming into the year, we were calling him the most overqualified backup quarterback in the entire league. So I'll allow it. But we'll let the viewers decide if your list is tainted.
Disqualified or
if
not.
your list is tainted by a guy who started like 11 games this year. But that's fine.
He's a game managing quarterback. We know what he can do. Now that CMC's there, it's just like we don't need him to do anything special. So Jimmy G, my first pick.
All right. Jimmy G is a good first pick. I mean, listen, backup quarterback is one of the most valuable positions you can have on your league. To have a guy that can come in and not throw things away and can win games for you. With that said, I'm between a couple guys here. I really want to go the Jacoby Brissett route. I do. I'm going to pick Cooper Rush because I think Cooper Rush is kind of being forgot about because of just how much the season is chaotic and we have such short memories as things go along. But Cooper Rush really kept this team alive. I mean, he led the team. I believe it was a 3-1 record or so as he was starting. Only one loss. I know that much after that opening game loss to the Buccaneers where Dak Prescott got hurt. There was plenty of discussion. Is Cooper Rush better than Dak Prescott? The answer is no. But regardless, the fact that he created that discussion says everything I need to know about him. He is one of the he needs to be getting a lot of credit for where the Cowboys are at this season. They're 8-3. They could easily be the reverse of that if Cooper Rush was bad and was like a quarterback the level of Nathan Peterman, who we were afraid was potentially going to start this week. Thank God that didn't happen. So Cooper Rush, I'm going with you. You are probably the most brand name backup, or at least you were a month ago. So I'm going to go with him.
Okay. I think that I have to take Jacoby Brissett then. I think that he has done a phenomenal job with an offense that has no identity. They are basically waiting for Deshaun to come in and take over and hopefully just do Deshaun things, I think is what the Browns are banking on, because what I saw was absolutely no identity, which is the same as what we've seen last year, the year before, and the year after that. If they're not running the ball, who are the Browns, right? So I think that he's done an amazing job of managing that offense. And I think Brissett can honestly be a good player. And almost any offensive scheme, like anywhere across any team. I think that he could walk in and be able to fulfill a backup role. So 100%, I'll go Brissett with my second pick.
He can definitely at least hold it down.
Yeah.
This draft is super interesting because it's not like there's obvious picks ever, in my opinion. I'm just looking up and down the depth charts right now. Like, which of these guys do I trust the most if my starter goes down? I'm going to go not off the beaten path here, but a little bit, maybe an unexpected pick. I'm going to go with Case Keenum. So Case Keenum, we've seen be a successful starter in this league. We saw him spearhead the Minneapolis Miracle to Stephon Diggs. Now he's back on a team with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. So should anything happen to Josh Allen, he's there. I trust him to hold down the fort if anything happens to Josh Allen. I think he keeps them as still a reasonable Super Bowl contender, even if Josh Allen were, God forbid, done for the year tomorrow. So Case Keenum, just that trust factor. He's shown it. He's a veteran. I like him.
Okay. I'm kind of going off the beaten path too. I think that some people will probably forget about this player, but I'm going to go with Tyler Huntley. We watched him come in last year, and he stepped in and fulfilled Lamar Jackson's shoes. Like, nobody expected that, right? We all kind of just expected the Ravens to go kerplunk, but he walked in, was able to game manage. He made some incredible plays. He's a very mobile quarterback. So Tyler Huntley gets my third pick.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I definitely did forget about him. I mean, he's one of those guys that is perfectly schemed to be the Ravens backup, right? Like, it's just diet Lamar, less experienced Lamar. Like, they're really good at getting guys that don't require them to change their offense at all. If he comes in, you're just going to get a little bit less explosive version of it. So I like that pick. Let's see. All right. Not going to go with anybody young, because as much as these rookie quarterbacks are exciting, like Malik Willis and all them, like, they are not a guy that I'm going to trust right now. You know what? I'll go with Jordan Love.
Perfect.
He's a guy that I think is sort of the right combination of young and has that potential. And at least we saw against the Eagles can maybe come in and again, hold down the fort if anything were to happen to Rodgers, if this team were competitive. I mean, it doesn't really matter now what fort he's holding down. The fort has already collapsed. But Jordan Love is a guy that I think probably has the most upside of anybody in this sort of consideration that we have, because like we know what Case Keenum is. We know what Cooper Rush is. We know even what Jimmy G and Jacoby Brissett are. I don't think we think there's superstar potential for any of those guys. So I'm going to go with Jordan Love for the fact that he has that nice mix of, he might be able to come in and do some good work for you, but he may also be elite if things break the right way.
Yeah, I've given the chance. I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater. I think that where he's at now, it's a perfect role. Would I ever want him to be a long-term starter? Absolutely not. But I do think that he's able to step in and game manage. He doesn't do anything flashy. He's not going to do anything to win you a game per se, but he is able to go out there and not make stupid mistakes and to be able to let the people around him do what they do to win a game.
I like it. All right. You know what I'm going to go with here? I'm going to go with somebody that I think we may have forgotten about just a little bit on this, in the same vein as your Jimmy G pick. I'm going to go with Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke has been a dog.
I forgot about Heineke.
I forgot about it too, because I'm looking. So I have the Our Lads like NFL QB depth chart thing brought up. So I'm looking almost exclusively at the second column just to remind myself of all the backup quarterbacks. And I occasionally look over at the left to see if a guy rings a bell like that. I mean, Mike White's listed as the starter here too, but I think, again, we agreed he's still considered a backup more or less. But Taylor Heineke definitely is a backup. I mean, he's done this a few times, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Carson Wentz going forward. I think Heineke probably should start the rest of the year with how well they've been playing, but he's a guy that, man, he came in and has revived the Commanders. So I think I just got great value here in the fourth round with Taylor Heineke. But hey, story of Taylor Heineke's career, right? Constantly overlooked. He's even overlooked in the backup quarterback draft, but at least I got him on a squad.
I'm happy you got him on the squad. For my fifth pick, I'll go with Mike White. I don't have a ton of faith in him, but he does his thing every now and then. So we'll go with Mike White.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. I mean, it says a lot that I was actually concerned about him taking Zach Wilson's job just because of when I heard that he was named the starter, I was like, oh, he's going to do the Mike White thing again, isn't he? Where he's just really good for no reason. And even if he's not good long-term, he'll be good enough this year to displace Zach Wilson, aka Emperor Palpatine or whatever.
Doesn't take much.
Yeah, no, it doesn't take much.
Your team's fighting for a first down, you can't even get 2 yards. Like,
no, Maddie, I think you could displace Zach Wilson as the Jets starter if you really hunkered
Honestly,
down and
probably
tried
so.
to do it. So, all right. 5th pick, Mr. Irrelevant of the backup quarterback draft. I like to do this every time we do these drafts and just kind of go over the guys that are still available in general, just so you guys don't think we completely forgot of these guys. So, I mean, Bailey Zappi is an interesting consideration. Okay. Joe Flacco, even another Jet, had a great start to the year. He's
Super
not
Bowl
a bad pick either. Looking up and down, Sam Ellinger, no thank you. Brett Rippon, no thank you. Let's see what else we got here. Tyrod Taylor, reasonable. Gardner Minshew, maybe reasonable. He's got a bit of a cult following. I think that's more for the mullet than anything else. Yeah. My last pick is going to be Jameis Winston.
Oh, that's a good pick, though.
Yeah, I think Jameis Winston got a bad rap. He did come out and say, it's always been the protocol that you don't lose your job due to injury. I'll be honest, Jameis, I don't know if he was referring to the Saints specific protocol, but that's just never been a thing. Guys lose their jobs because they get hurt all the time. I mean, that's literally the crux of Tom Brady's entire career. But that's just not a thing. I do think he got a bad rap. I hope we see him start somewhere else. And honestly, I hope the Saints turn to him soon. Andy Dalton is not that guy, and the Saints are just
and he's never going to be that guy. Like, people keep trying to make it happen. Stop trying to make Andy Dalton happen. It's not going to happen.
Andy Dalton is the low upside quarterback, and at this point in the Saints season, you need the high upside quarterback. We all know what Jameis Winston is. We've said it a million times. He's the guy that might throw you 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in the same game. The final score is going to be 35-32 every time. At least he can make some plays for you and win you some games that maybe you shouldn't win. May also lose you some games that you shouldn't lose, but man, Andy Dalton is just as vanilla and boring as they get. I'll take Jameis Winston and hope that he becomes a starter before this year is said and done. So there's our 5. I've got Cooper Rush, Case Keenum, Jordan Love, Taylor Heineke, Jameis Winston. Maddie, you've got Jimmy G, Jacoby Brissett, Tyler Huntley. I missed your 4th. Oh, Teddy Bridgewater. 4th, and then Mike White. So, guys, we will get this up in our normal little graphic for you just to see which of our 5 backup quarterbacks you guys think is the best. And tell me if you're throwing a flag on Maddie's Jimmy G pick. And if it's more egregious than my Taylor Heineke pick, hey, maybe we're both wrong here for picking these guys. But I think we got a good list going. And
that was kind of fun.
I think that one's fun because that's an obscure draft, right? Like that's a weird one. So kind of makes you think of who's even eligible to be picked and that sort of thing. So all right, we'll move on to our weekly game picks. My weekly game picks. I'll be honest, it wasn't a great week. Look, we got a little too. I got on our high horse last week, did well, but this week my 3 picks were the Giants +8 away at the Cowboys. That push, they lost by exactly 8 points. The Seahawks -4 at home versus the Raiders. Thank you, Josh Jacobs. Very rude of you. And then the Bucks -3 against the Browns. Browns won in overtime. Mm-hmm. Not great. The Brady divorce revenge tour is not going the way that I thought it would. So he just lost to the Browns. So it wasn't great, but I'm not a quitter. We're going to make picks again, and I feel a little better about these. I don't know. Last week it felt like I was kind of grasping at straws a little bit to find 3 picks I like. These I feel a little better about. So my first one, I'm going to go with the Dolphins +3.5 away at the 49ers. This game just screams like it's going to be a 3-point or less game. You got Mike McDaniel going to play his old team in San Francisco. He knows them like the back of his hand. He's got so much explosive firepower on offense. I just feel like they will keep this close even in an away game.
I agree. I do think that this is going to be a high-point game.
Yeah, so, I mean, the 49ers defense is just coming off of, I believe they shut out the Saints. But, listen, the Dolphins are not the Saints. So, I don't expect that to happen again. My next pick, I'm going to go with the Texans +7 at home versus the Browns. This is strictly off of the storyline of the game. Deshaun Watson is coming to Houston. The Texans are going to get up for this one. The coaches are going to get them ready to, at the very least, be fired up for this one. It's not going to be another apathetic game for a team that has 1 win this year. I think they will keep it closer than 7 points strictly off of that. And we don't know what Deshaun Watson's going to look like. This is his first game in 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, we haven't seen him in 2 years. He was just able to start practicing, was it 2 weeks ago? And that's a lot for a team to kind of get used to a quarterback in such a short amount of time. I know that they kind of had offseason, but there's already a little bit of a divide there just because of everything, all the off-field drama, right, going into it. So I think that you're dead on. And I think that Houston's going to want to come out and make a point because everybody's eyes are going to be on this game. We all want to know what Deshaun Watson's going to look like, right? So everybody's going to be tuning in. This is every individual Houston Texans game to be able to make a point on.
Yeah, this will be the one that they're fighting for, a little bit of pride that Deshaun, the whole saga with him is the reason that the Texans have the record that they have right now, right? If Deshaun behaved himself and was still a Houston Texan, they would not be sitting here with one victory 13 weeks into the season. So I think they'll get up for this one and keep it closer than 7 points. And then my final pick, Chargers -2 at the Raiders. I've liked the Chargers. Maybe I'm brainwashed because their record is not what I thought it would be coming into the year, but I think the Raiders are riding a bit of a high. They've won 2 in a row now, and I just think it's time to come back down to earth for Vegas a little bit. The Chargers are the better team. They have the better record. I don't care that it's an away game. All they got to do is win by a field goal to cover this one. This is probably the pick I feel the best about this week, honestly.
You know what? I agree with you. I do. They're towards the bottom of pass rush win rate. I cannot talk. Goodness gracious. I don't think that the Raiders are going to be able to target the Chargers' weak points, and I think that the Chargers are just going to blow right through them.
Yeah, I just think that the Raiders do not have it in them to win 3 games in a row and, start to creep their way back into national relevance. I think they go back into their hole after this week. Chargers take care of them, get to 7-5, which is a record that I feel like the Chargers should have for given how much talent they have. I still think they should make the playoffs. So we will see. This is potentially the first step to getting back to that point. On to our viewer questions before we call it quits for the day. This was an interesting one. Again, Raiders related. Do you feel that the Davante Adams trade helped the Raiders at all? Now, there's a few ways to think about this one. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Madi, and then I will give you mine.
Yes, I do think that it helped the Raiders. I think that it diversified their offense. I just don't think that you have a quarterback who can take advantage of that and be an offensive coordinator who's able to play call to make it a game-changing addition. But overall, yeah, I do think the Adams trade did help the Raiders.
Yeah, I think it helped them beyond this year, maybe. The Raiders, we talked about it earlier, they have a lot of decisions to make this offseason, but to me, it comes down to what they gave up for him. They didn't give up a ton for what is arguably the best receiver in football, at the very least top 3, at the very least top 5, regardless of how jaded you are about maybe him being older than some of the younger studs in the league. They gave up a 1st and 2nd round pick that ultimately turned into Quay Walker and Christian Watson for the Packers, those are some good gets for the Packers. Don't get me wrong. But they didn't have to give up some crazy pick haul. It wasn't a ton. And Davante Adams is the kind of guy that if and when the Raiders find the right coaching and just the right pieces to put around, he's a guy they're going to be happy that they have. They have the cap space to keep him around. It's not like it's crippling their pocketbooks or anything like that. So no, I think it was still beneficial for them. But it's a valid question because it's like if they don't have Davante Adams, how much better or worse is their record this year? Is it really that much different? I probably not. But you get a guy and then you worry about that stuff after the fact. So I think it was still the right move to set them up for success. They just haven't done a great job of realizing that success just yet.
I agree.
And then our next question, again, we just touched on it a little bit. Do you think Deshaun Watson will be able to turn the Browns around? And I'm not sure. It's such a hard thing to answer when a guy hasn't played in that long.
We don't really know what to expect, to be honest.
No, we don't. We don't know if this is going to be a rusty Deshaun Watson or what it's going to be. So the Browns are sitting at 4-7. Their upcoming schedule is the Texans, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Saints, the Commanders, and the Steelers. Some tough games in there. I mean, the divisional matchups against the Bengals and the Ravens, we know those aren't going to be easy. The Saints, and then the Saints, the Commanders, and the Steelers to close out the year. I mean, those are 3 potential wins. But again, the Commanders have been playing tough too. The Steelers have a talented defense. I don't think he's going to turn them around this year in the sense of them making the playoffs. I don't.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think he comes in. So they're 4-7. I'll call the Texans game a win. I'll call Saints a win and Steelers a win. So 3 more wins. They get to 7 and 10. I think that's reasonable for the Browns. And I feel like that's their ceiling for this year. This, with as many games as Watson was suspended for and as much praise as we gave Jacoby Brissett, unfortunately, Brissett didn't get them to a point where it was like, okay, now Deshaun can come in and get us to the playoffs. Like 4-7 is not the record they were probably hoping to come in with Deshaun at. So I think it's too far gone this year. I think this is going to just be a few weeks of seeing how much Deshaun, how rusty is he, and what's he going to look like maybe next year. But for this year, no, I think the Browns are kind of cooked a little bit.
I can agree with that. It's a good question, right? Because it's kind of on everybody's minds. Nobody really has delved right into it just because we've been distracted by the off the field drama. But obviously the Browns do think that he's going to be the game changer, the Messiah who's going to come in and resolve everything. We don't know enough about him. He hasn't played in 2 years to be able to say what he's going to do. For sure, he's not going to do – I don't think he's going to do anything that's going to turn this team around this year. I agree with you on that front. And I don't know about going forward because, again, like I said, like the Browns don't have an identity on offense. There's nothing to even fall back on to say, like, what are they going to do? So it's kind of just like a wait and see situation. But as of this year, I don't think that he's going to be able to do anything that's going to turn it around.
Yeah, I do think it's funny how, to open the podcast, I kind of talked about fans having a short memory and just the weeks going by and making you forget things. The fact that in the offseason, this was the only thing we talked about and that we kind of did forget about him for probably the past 2 months or so, just because the rest of the NFL season is so busy is just crazy to me. And now we're finally here week 13 and he's coming back and it almost feels like it's out of nowhere, despite him being every single headline in the offseason.
Well, yeah. And that's hard because it's just like, at least for me, like I don't even want to give it any more attention, but it's also, it is intriguing because it's the most talked about storyline in football right now, I feel like.
Yeah, so this will be the first week that we are given an indication of what Deshaun Watson is going to be. Obviously, you expect some level of rust, regardless whether, that means just one touchdown or if it means he is absolutely catastrophically bad. Who knows? We are going to find out in the next few weeks whether he is joining, the Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers echelon of being paid way too much to be garbage, or if this was actually a good investment by the Browns. I honestly have no idea. I feel like after a few weeks, he'll get back to who he is because he is still young. I don't think the time away has completely zapped his ability.
He's well rested.
Yeah. So it'll be
fresh legs. I mean, who was it? Josh Allen, who came out this week and said, if you are an athlete playing in the NFL, you've been playing all games and you've reached it to this point, everybody's playing with an injury, whether you're talking about it or not. So he has the unique privilege of coming in well rested, and he basically gets to start in the middle of the season with a fresh body.
We will see what Deshaun Watson holds for the Browns and potentially what their outlook is for, the next several years. Obviously, they got him locked up for, I believe it's 5 years. But that'll do it for this episode of Off the Bench. Maddie, any parting thoughts as we head into week 13? Yeah, 13.
We're headed into week 13. Yeah, we have one more game tonight, which I'm ready for. And I'm excited because I do think that we are going to have a live show this week. We haven't been able to because holidays and all the good stuff, but we're back on it this week. And it's always fun to get to talk to the people who listen to this podcast too, because it's nice to be able to interact and have a good time.
Right. So, if you guys want to come in with some fantasy football questions, regular NFL questions, we will be live this Thursday just before Thursday Night Football. What is the game this week on Thursday night? It is Buffalo and New England. Man, I should have known that. Okay.
I was excited to see what your reaction was.
Yeah, you'll be getting an extra invested Brandon in that live show because man, we can make a statement in that game. So that'll be a good one. But all right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. We are going back on the bench for the next few days until we see you for that Thursday live show. For Maddie Kroll, I'm Brandon Carney, and we will talk to you guys soon.